Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studios. So, what have I got for you lovely lot today? Well, this is a painting that I did in my recent local watercolour class and the students really enjoyed it. So I thought you might like to give it a go. And it is a painting that has been inspired by one of my favourite artists, John Blockley, who we have looked at previously on this channel. So we're going to have a go at painting this lovely little country cottage with lots of texture and lots of experimenting with the paint. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. Now, John Blockley, who's a huge favourite of mine, really was the master of painting old cottages and experimenting with watercolour, creating these wonderful textures. Now, some of you may recognise this painting I did, hugely influenced by his work. Link above if you haven't seen it. So I did a little sketchbook sketch first, just to plan out the composition for today's tutorial. Today's materials. My paper is some Bockingford rough. It's £200, nice and thick, so it won't need stretching. Now, it's not a cotton paper, but it's a very good quality paper. But of course, any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today are cobalt blue, phthalo blue, yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, burnt umber, burnt sienna, Payne's grey and some Mars black, which is a lovely granulating colour. And from my range I have a 3/4 inch flat, a number 12 and number 6 round, and my trusty number 3 rigger. And here's the pencil sketch, which of course is free to download from my website, link in the description below. Off we go, and I'm taking my flat brush and some cleanish water and painting everything up to the top of the cottages here. A flat brush is perfect for going around those straight edges. Right, so I'm after a nice bright blue, so I've got a mixture of cobalt and phthalo blue, and I'm painting in the sky area here and painting in the complete area that I've just previously wet. Now, while that's still very wet, I'm dropping in a little touch of yellow ochre. Don't mix it too much or it'll go green. And a little dab of alizarin crimson, just to add some interest into the sky. So when that's dry, I'm just adding in some masking fluid along the top of the roofs and the chimneys. Now, it probably would have made more sense to have done that before painting in the blue sky, but hey-ho. Next, I'm simply taking a piece of white candle wax and just lightly putting in some texture here where the mountains are going to be. Don't go mad with this or it's just going to look too false, just nice and lightly. Next, using my number 12 brush and some Mars black, you could use some Payne's grey or any black, I'm just putting in the shape here of the mountain behind. But very light and watery here where it meets the horizon. I want those colours to come through the layer. And you can see here where that wax resist is giving that lovely little bit of texture and the blue colour is coming through. Really nice and dark around these chimneys to give that extra bit of contrast. And while it's still damp, I'm splatting in the same colour, keeping the same diagonal angle as the mountain. Right, while I'm letting that dry, let's concentrate on the foreground here, and I'm just starting by wetting it all with sort of cleanish water. Next, I'm dropping in loads of colours, too many to mention, but I'll list them all below. Let them all mix and blend on the paper. And to keep things moving, I'm just giving a light spray with clean water, and then I'm tilting my board to about an angle of 45 degrees to let the paint slowly move down. Next, with my number 6 brush, I'm just splatting in lightly some Mars Black, and Mars Black, being a really granular colour, should give me some lovely textures. And again tilting my board to get a little movement in the paint. Then I'm lightly tapping some blobs of clean water to give a nice soft mottly effect. Now you could use salt to get a similar effect, but I find blobs of clean water is just a little more subtle. Right, so when my mountain is totally dry, I'm taking off the masking fluid with a rubber eraser. Just be careful, do it slowly, paper could rip. Right, now it's time for the cottages, and I'm starting off with a very light watery wash of Payne's Grey on the roof here. Then dropping in wet a little touch of burnt sienna. And the same here on this roof. So for this roof I'm making it fairly colourful, starting off with some cobalt blue, dropping in this pinkish colour. I can't tell you exactly all the colour mixes here, because as you can see I pick up a lot of stray colours on my palette, so I'll try and list them roughly below. And you can see with the chimneys here I'm only painting the shadow side, leaving that front face unpainted. And I'm using the same colours here for this chimney and the side of the cottage. Now I'm using Payne's Grey as well as the Mars Black because the Payne's Grey has a much more bluer bias and it just looks a little bit more interesting. Clean water here, then all the same colours again, and letting them just mix and blend on the paper. Cobalt blue and Payne's Grey here, and any stray colours that I just happen to pick up on my brush. So once those first washes are dry, I'm coming back on with another layer or glaze using basically all the same colours. But this would be a real opportunity for you to experiment with your own colours. But keep the palette fairly limited, don't add in any new colours which don't belong. So more important than the colours you use is getting the values right. So this side of the cottage wants to be lighter than that left hand side to suggest that bit of light coming in. Next, for these stone walls here, I'm putting in a base colour of Payne's Grey. And blending into it a little touch of burnt umber. And again, I'll try and remember and list all the colours as I use them below. And to create a little texture on the top of the wall here, I'm sprinkling in a few granules of table salt. Nice and sparingly, don't overdo it. I'd say about 57 granules. A stone wall over here as well. Chimney pot here, how about a little touch of burnt sienna? Light red is a good alternative if you don't have it. For these posts, a little touch of yellow ochre, but I think there's a little bit of burnt umber in there as well. And here for the highlight side, I'm just lifting out with a damp brush. Right, so I don't like that obvious hard edge there, so I'm going to quickly soften it with a damp tissue. Then painting in some clean water, and then suggesting here with this pinky colour a sort of distant bush, and it'll also help to outline the fence below. And here I've just added in a touch of Mars Black. And the same colour down here. So now we need to let this totally dry, so it's a perfect time for a short break. And how about a nice hot cup of beefy Bovril? Perfect for a chilly day. Next, I'm lightly spraying in this area here with some clean water. Then with my number 6 brush, I'm lightly splatting in some Mars Black. And now we're really beginning to get lots of lovely speckled texture. People often say to me, how do you make the splats go exactly where you want? And I always reply, you should see the state of my studio wall. Next, I'm taking that same pinky colour, but I've darkened it with a little touch of Payne's Grey and painting in a nice juicy wash here to suggest this little bush. All done with my number 6 brush. Next, the sharpened wooden end of my brush to drag out the paint and create these lovely little branches. And with each stroke, the paint will run out to give you these nice tapered ends. Next, of course, the famous number 3 rigger. Perfect for these little spindly branches. And because of the length of the bristles, it holds a lot of paint, so I can continue on for some details here on the fence. Now with some burnt umber, and I'm using this contrast to outline the gatepost below, and I'm using very much the same techniques as the last bush. Nice and juicy colour, and then flicking out with my brush, and then using the wooden end to drag out these finer details. And again, for these finer details, I'm using my rigger again. Alright, don't overdo it. Next, with a slightly darker colour of burnt umber with some Mars black added, I'm using all exactly the same techniques for this bush here, and I'm keeping all the direction of the branches roughly the same. It just helps to give that windswept look. Next, I'm painting the door in a cobalt blue, which is a nice sympathetic colour with the rest of the painting. And rather than have a hard edge where the door finishes at the bottom, I'm blending it into the background. Little touch of Payne's Grey for a shadow at the top here. And a few little touches of watery burnt umber for some shadows. Shadow side for each one of these posts. Right, so now it's time for this lovely old stone wall, and I'm starting again by putting in a light spray of clean water. So next for the wall itself, and I'm doing what we call a little bit of negative painting, basically painting in the dark shadow to create the shape of the stones. And the water spray I put there first just helps to make these lines look a little bit less obvious, more blending in and fuzzing out. And I'm just looking for areas which look like potential rock shapes so I can just outline them and bring them out. So that's why it was important when I painted that original grey base colour that it wasn't too dark, so I can bring out the shape here with this darker value. And here these are rocks which have perhaps fallen off the stone wall onto the ground. And I'm painting this wall in exactly the same way, but with perhaps less detail. Now for this path, I merely want to suggest that there's a path there, so I'm going to be very subtle and just literally take a damp brush, rub it back and forth multiple times, and then lift out with a tissue. That's enough, it's just the indication of a path. Next I'm putting a little shadow under this bush here with a mix of burnt umber and Payne's Grey. And just adding a few grasses here on the edge of the path with my rigger. Now I'm going back to the cottages to put in those final details which should pull all the painting together. Now it's important you don't make this line work too dark and too strong, and it's equally important that you don't outline everything. Leave plenty of gaps, just the odd little line here and there to bring out the detail. I really don't want to make this a line and wash painting, so it's important to keep it nice and loose and fresh. Less is more, as you'll often hear me say. So with something like these roof tiles, just putting the odd 2 or 3 lines in is enough to suggest the whole roof is covered in tiles. And for the window here, just 4 simple little brush strokes with some Payne's Grey. And a little dab with a tissue to make it less obvious. Next for this lovely old wrought iron gate, and I'm using my number 6 brush and some Payne's Grey and just trying to paint it in with just one simple brush stroke. It really doesn't matter if you don't connect up every line. This is supposed to be an old gate, so it can be wobbly as well. Next I want to put in a few little highlights, so I'm taking directly from my tube some nice gooey white gouache. This is Titanium White by Jackman's. If it looks too obvious, I can simply smudge with my finger. Next, for this little window here, and I'm going to suggest a little bit of life going on inside the cottage, so I'm just painting in any bright yellow here. And a little touch of dark something here in the bottom. Next, I just want to show a little bit of soft light reflection from that window on the grass, so I'm just taking a soft pastel and lightly drawing onto my finger and lining up directly below to smudge in that little bit of colour. Nice and soft. Next, I'm taking a white pastel pencil and painting in this little bit of smoke from the chimney, blurring slightly with my finger. Now, it's not going brilliantly over top of that area where the wax was, but I think it still works. There we go, all done, and this one in just over 3 hours. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Now, this is definitely one for experimenting. Get some splatting going, a little bit of salt, some wax. Just really experiment, because there really is no other medium that's as versatile that you can have such fun with. And in the meantime, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one. Of course, I can't always reply to them all, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Have a great week, everyone.